All right. That's new.
That was good.
Goodness. Okay. We now convene the Minturn Town Council meeting for August 2nd, 2024. October. Hey, almost sounds the same. Are you starting on me already?
No, it's a good thing you showed up. Just saying. It's a good thing you're here.
Roll call, please.
Gusty here.
Brian here.
Tom here.
Lynn here. Here.
Eric here.
And Earl is here. So let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next is approval of the consent agenda. Do we have anyone wanting to talk about anything on that agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Eric seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the regular agenda. Do we have any?
No changes.
No changes.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Eric seconds.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kate,
Okay.
second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, does any council members have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda tonight? Hearing none. We go on to public comment. This is the time when if anybody wants to make a comment on anything that is not on the agenda this evening, then you're welcome to come forward and address council.
Imagine that.
Hello.
No, you're good. You can hop up there. Chicken man. No, it's okay.
Go
No,
first.
Go ahead. The chicken man.
I didn't record it, it's good. So you're just on already, you had one.
Please, Tim.
Yes. Tim McMahon, Avon. Just three quick things today. Last week I brought up at Avon, Eagle, and Gypsum Town Council, and last night at Dale Town Council, and also the County Commissioners meeting. Wanted to see about maybe putting a requirement to get on the ballot town council as attending maybe like 6 previous meetings the previous year. Just so people know what they're getting into before they get on the ballot. It also shows the community that they might actually care about the community before trying to run and just get a position. Let's see, 2 other things. One, so Speak Up Reach Out, Aaron from Speak Up Reach Out met with CDOT about suicide on the Green River Bridge, and it is a go. The big thing now is money. So I asked Vail last night, asking you guys tonight, I'll ask Avon and them next week. Possibly think about maybe donating some money to help get it started. Because that's the biggest thing right now, is the money for it. And the third thing, I know it was talked about a couple meetings ago, speed downtown. So this morning when I was doing the sign at 8:53 this morning, there was an East-West trucking dump truck, not East-West Properties, East-West dump truck or trucking, that was coming, whatever way that road is. It's going down the mountain, so I say it's south, but it's not. 24, like going towards the highway. And in front of Sunrise Minturn, slams on his brakes because he was falling too close. And his whole hood flew open, which was hilarious. I actually almost dropped the sign. I was laughing so hard. But it's like that corner right there, just standing there today and the times I have, it's a dangerous corner. A lot of people are swinging, and they don't even need to. They're in small cars, but they're swinging the corner in the middle of the lane. And it's like if someone was coming around, and anytime a semi truck comes, it's a 1-lane road. You can't get 2 lanes. So I don't know if maybe like better signage or flashy lights or something to get people's attention and maybe slow down. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chicken Man. Larry.
Yes, sir. Larry Stone. I'm representing 201 Main Street, the Scarab. The reason I wanted to come and talk to you guys, after being up here quite a bit, going through the DDA process, I started realizing that we as a community really need to work on harmonizing between the business community, the citizens, and the leadership of the town. I recall, I think Mike Gallagher was the last council member, and he may have been a mayor at the time, who came into my business and said, Larry, how are you and Jane doing? How is business? Are you guys doing all right? Are things well? And that's been a long time ago. And when I think about the efforts that the town has put in, I have been incredibly impressed with the last few councils, particularly with the planning department, with what has happened in the landscaping downtown. It's amazing. It used to just be flat asphalt. So having been here, geez, I'm 59, I think 33, 34 years the Scarab has been operating. We had to leave the town because we could not survive here. And we went to Eaglevale for a while, but we always wanted to come back. And I know that you guys have set an agenda for being neighborly and working with the neighbors for the next 2 years. And it takes a two-way thing for a relationship, right? So the questions that I have is how can we as a business community and we as the leadership, the board, work together in harmony so that we're checking in with each other. I know we hire outside consultants to come in and give us advice and their opinions, but I think we have some pretty smart business owners that are here and could probably offer something. I know that we have an opportunity because we have new business owners and we have business owners who are also residents in town, which has not always been the case. And so that's been a very positive thing for me to see. And thank God our business is coming on 3 record years in a row, and this may turn out to be a 4th, or it may plateau a little bit. I'm not sure. But when, we try to be good neighbors as a business, when the state mandated sales tax be collected for destination of delivery, I changed our policy so that we could collect sales tax for the town of Minturn. It's kind of circumventing. We don't deliver, we offer free installation. But it's something that we chose to do to be good neighbors to the town. When Jane and I invested, I don't know, probably 25 grand into the Agora, it was because we wanted to offer a community space. We had some support from the state and from Sunrise, and it has been amazing. And I have been able to connect with so many of our community members and have seen families with kids come in and play and eat food and have a great time. It's been a blessing. So when I'm up here tonight, I want to ask, is the town looking for positive business relations where we can have growth, or are we looking to keep things the same? Because I live downtown and I seem to get mixed signals. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention. And when it comes to forming the DDA, some of the stakeholders are wondering, some of them are not voting for the DDA, some are concerned and saying, well, I don't know that the town is really for business growth. So if we're having development, a downtown development authority, do we really have a council, a government that supports downtown business growth? And so I think it's something to ask yourselves, and I can't speak for all the businesses, but I know for one, Jane and I included, we would like to find a way to work closely. She's right now down at the community fund where she participates and our business contributes financially. So those are my thoughts. And I just ask, please listen to your business owners. They're the ones that are bringing the sales tax dollars for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I'll try to get together with you and some of the other business owners that are concerned and be happy to sit down with y'all.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Marco.
I'm at fault. I don't have the agenda. Is 151 historic designation on the agenda?
Yes, it is.
So I can talk later.
Okay. And there's agenda right there by the coat rack. Oh, she's got it for you. You hurt your knee?
Oh, no. Not important.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to address the council on anything not on the agenda? Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. I was just wondering if everybody on council had the opportunity to read the article that was in the paper about downtown Eagle and their businesses last week. And if not, if you would look it up and please read it. because it talks about the issues they're having also.
Okay, thank you. Right, so if there's no one else, we'll move on to the staff reports. Nope, council comments. Always try to get rid of yours. Y'all's comments.
I don't have anything.
Yes,
No.
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay.
I guess I would thank the VRD. Anyone that go down to that was super cool. The race that finished.
That drew a lot of people, didn't it?
Yeah, it was really cool how the businesses came out together and all the people. It was awesome. So thank them and thank everybody who participated. That was a really cool event.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to staff reports.
My manager's report is in the packet. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any discussion you want to have on anything on the manager's report? Okay. Might make break a record tonight.
Easier.
Next is Minturn North Construction Company conditional use permit update.
I will mirror what Michelle said. My report is in the packet and I am available for any questions.
Yes.
Okay, well, any questions from Madison?
No, we need to keep this trend up.
I actually did have.
Feel a little jet lag that time?
Oh, there's Brian.
I've had some feedback from some residents over there around. There's one machine, and I'm not a operator. You can tell me what it is, but it's the larger excavator has seems to have a backup alarm that is twice or 10 times as loud as every other piece of equipment over there. And I did validate that you can hear that thing from like the top of Cougar Ridge, most of the way up Grouse. And so some of the residents over there were wondering if there was any way to change the setting on that or anything. It's literally one piece of equipment that is very loud beeping. I don't know if any of my the street people here could.
Yeah, we can check on that. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we got a volume control on that thing or not.
They can put another backup alarm on it, a quieter one.
Yeah, it's a hammer.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, we're already, no special presentation, so we're into the business items. First item is ordinance 11, series 2024, first reading, an ordinance amending the town's historic register to add 151 Main Street.
So I have technically given a presentation on this before. Would you like me to go over it again since it's been a few months, or how would you like me to handle this tonight?
Why don't you do a quick overview?
Quick overview. I can do a quick overview. Okay, so this is a staff-initiated nomination for 151 Main Street under 3 different eligibility criteria: connection with persons significant in history, distinctive characteristics of a type, period, method of construction or artisan, and geographic importance. And so this was built in 1914. I'm having trouble pulling that up right now. I apologize. So as detailed within the staff report, there are several items that address all of those eligibility criteria. This was originally brought to y'all in June. Council decided to essentially table the discussion of this ordinance until we could have a discussion about flexibility and stability and bringing an ordinance through addressing that criteria in the interim. And so that ordinance has gone through, providing several additional options that were not previously available, including eliminating design review guidelines or potentially redundant approval requirements, and also creating a process whereby property owners can determine if their structure would be historically designated without necessarily supporting such a designation. And so that ordinance finished second reading at the last council meeting. And so now we are having the continued hearing of first reading for ordinance 11 adding 151 Main Street to the historic register.
Thank you, Liz. So before we get the public involved, is there any comment or questions from council? Dusty?
I don't have anything.
I can see you, Brian.
Sorry.
Not until after public comment.
Lynn?
Not this time.
No. No. Okay, yeah, we've discussed this to death, so we're good, but I do want to open this, open the hearing now and to the public. And we'll take any comments, questions, clarifications needed by anyone. And I think a good discussion between folks is warranted. So at this time, I'd like to invite whoever would like to come up and say a piece. Ms. Ayala. Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Jan Aiello, and I live at, depending upon who you're asking, we laughed at this last time, 30 Man Avenue, which it has always been, and then the county changed it to 591 Main, so take your choice. I've been here for over 45 years. I'll do my piece, and then I have a letter that Nella wrote. She could not be here.
That's
So
in the packet, I believe, right?
is it in there? Is Nella's letter in the packet? I grew up in Idaho, and many young men back in World War II from Boise were in the 10th Mountain. When I got married many, many years ago, my dad had let them know that I had just bought a house in Minturn, and they went nuts, and I was surrounded by a whole bunch of them because their wives lived in Leadville. They lived at Camp Hale, but whenever they got time off, they came down to Minturn, mainly because of its charm, the people, and kind of what it represented. They would go dancing at what is now the saloon and what used to be the YMCA. They would go to functions, and they told me that they were very excited that I was in this town and to please keep its character. Make sure the character is kept. So over the years, I've always talked to visitors, what brings you to Minturn? And they say, it ain't Vail, it ain't Lion's Head, it ain't Avon, it ain't Beaver Creek, and it ain't Edwards. It is Minturn. We appreciate the charm. So my ask is twofold. Please keep that in mind. And then when it comes to voting on this, if anybody has a financial interest, whether it's expressed or not, they don't vote. Because there's a lot of people involved in this who have a financial possible interest, and they should not be around the vote. The vote needs to come from hearing from the actual community, not just a board. And then I'll read this from Nella. To the members of council, I have lived in Minturn my whole life, watching it grow beyond measure in the last 39 years. Overwhelmingly, when you ask someone visiting from out of town what their favorite thing about Minturn is, the answer is usually the small town charm, uniqueness, and history as it pertains to both railroad and mining. As a longtime local, it is befuddling to me when buildings like 155 and 151 Main Street are not automatically protected from destruction and redevelopment. There is somewhat of an epidemic we have on a national scale where we find it commonplace to sell, tear down, and redevelop buildings that are in many cases able to be revitalized and preserved for another generation of use. In this instance, you have what was originally built for residents, two buildings that out of need for the town to have more commerce, rezoned these two humble and charming structures for multi-use purposes. There is a story behind that, if only there was a way to preserve that part of Minturn history. As a whole, the character of this town is changing with all the new development in both north and south end of town. Too many structures taking up the whole blueprint of the plots, built as high as possible, taking away from the small town charm and character Minturn has as a turn of the century railroad town. If we do not take steps to preserve downtown, the uniqueness of Minturn will continue to fade away due to greed. Many of us live and choose to stay in Minturn because of that small town charm and feel. The last thing downtown needs is for someone to redevelop anything sky high with no parking. We don't need to repeat a repeat of Hotel Minturn. I didn't know she put that in there. Historical preservation is a necessary step to take in keeping Minturn Minturn. Lastly, I think it's deplorable to hear rumblings that there are folks on the Historic Preservation Commission who speak from both sides of the mouth and approve and then renege the approval of said preservation for their own greedy agenda. I see you. I don't approve. Please preserve 155 and 151 Main Street. The charm of Minturn needs it. Thank you for your time, Nella. Nella's right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Marco?
Marco Toranzi, and I'm the owner of 151 now on Main Street. And I wish to clarify my position since the last time I spoke here, when I mentioned that I like the idea of having an historical designation on a plate in front of the building. Why not? And I needed to understand better the consequences and the effects of such designation. In the meantime, I educated myself and I read what the effects would be according to section 19 of the code. I believe they're all included in that section, if I'm correct. And I couldn't detect anything that was not a restriction or a complication or honors to the owner. On 912, I did read the document, the 6-7 options that were going to be amended. And I was misled by the language on option 6. And I read it back. Create a process whereby property owners can determine if the structure would be historically designated. I'm second language, but what I read is property owner can determine if the structure is designated. At that point, I kind of said, okay, whenever there is a designation, I will have final word. I can determine if or not the property would be designated. That's the first meaning of the word, determine. The second is established based on information. And I think that's what was intended, correct? So at that point, I was misled by the language. I read it, that first meaning that comes to mind, determine if was to me, I had the choice. I'm in favor of protecting the historic character and appearance of the town. I intend to do the same with the Blue House, as they call it, and I call it. I believe there are design standards and guidelines currently established with the 100 block rules that, from my point of view and for my intentions, are sufficient without the need for additional restrictions. I really intend to maintain the character of the Blue House, where it is, what it is, but I do not have any reason to approve or be in favor or additional restrictions that could make the future of the building more onerous or complicated to me or another owner. So based on how it is currently defined, I'm not in favor of the designation. I think the protection is already there and I intend to protect it myself. I know that my intentions are not the key factor in deciding, but that's my position.
So just for clarification, if we do designate it historically, we have, as you've probably read through, the options give you a little bit of flexibility on some changes that you could make as needed. And is also being designated as a historically landmarked. There may be some benefits you can get from that too.
The benefits were not very clear. I know that the rules say that I would be informed of the effects.
Mm-hmm.
There's not such a, there's no effect that I was informed of any incentive or positive or other than section 19. And maybe I missed something and I'm open.
We did enact an ordinance at our last meeting that gives some special privileges to historic houses that other houses don't have in the 100 block. I don't know if you've seen those or not.
No, probably I missed it.
I think that would be important to review.
Those have been emailed directly. They were emailed directly to the property owner. Marco, I emailed you those directly and you responded saying you received the email.
Yeah, I might have missed that document.
No.
So there are advantages for you with the historical designation, and if you really plan on keeping, the structure intact, then I think it would be to your advantage to have us.
I will definitely review. Maybe I can look it up while I wait here.
Okay.
I missed that.
I'll walk you through it, Marco.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely intend not to even touch it, but so I don't see the reason for my particular situation to have further restrictions.
Okay.
But I understand that the future can be different with a different owner.
Okay. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Ken?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really seriously would be happy to walk you through some of the revisions that were made. Ken Halliday, 811 Main. I really think I just want to underscore a couple of points that when people come to Minturn, they expect a historic town. And if you think 10 years, 20 years forward, what are our historic buildings downtown? And think about what's going to give it that human scale and character if these two buildings are gone and the trees are gone and the story is gone. And so I see them as very important, and I see development around those buildings. And I have some limited experience with this that I've shared before. Another point I want to make is that I think we need to think about the business in Minturn is in different hubs, not just all trying to force it into the 100 block. We've got the Dow, we've got Battle Mountain, we've got a bunch of stuff happening in the 500, 400 block. We've got downtown. There's a number of spots that we could have commercial development. And I think we have to be careful as we move forward that we don't lose our historic positioning, because in my experience, and I've seen it firsthand, that historic positioning becomes a competitive edge 10, 20 years now, and you can't get those buildings back. And I would say that I absolutely know Marco will take care of it, but we have to think long-term and additional owners, et cetera. And so I would also point out that we've given a lot of flexibility, and there's more to come. The direction from council to historic preservation is keep working on other ideas. And so without committing to anything, we're going to look at setbacks, we're going to look at parking, and I can't promise what we'll come back with recommendations, but we're going to continue to look at that. So any additional changes, Marco, that we make, those will continue to benefit the property. We are looking for benefits because the town doesn't have money to hand out. So we're looking for other ways to benefit and make it good to have historic designation. And the last thing I would say is, I know there's a lot of letters written into council. Just keep in mind the last meeting we had, there's a lot of people out of town that I know wanted to be here and that would have written letters had we known that was going on. So I just, those are my comments. Thank you for your time. And I apologize, I have to run to a Minturn Community Fund board meeting and dinner. It started about 30 minutes ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street, ex-business owner of Minturn. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I had a lovely lunch with an ex-customer of mine today. So I'm going to say some of the things that, of course, you've heard before. But she came to town unknowingly. My store was gone. She used to shop at Kathy's and said, "What is going on?" And I said, "Well, you know, unfortunately, our leases were changed around. And so it was a matter of my retiring because I didn't know how long I would be there, being that my business was up for, the building was up for sale." And she expressed her regrets as to what's happening to the downtown. I also ran into some of my customers at the markets this summer with the same regrets. One of them saying something quite profound that threw me out of whack. And I'm going to repeat it. You don't have to believe it. But he said, "What are you trying to do? Murder Minturn?" And I went, "Whoa, that's a pretty hard thing to say." I just want you to realize we don't have to save every single building in this town. That's not what's being tried. What's being tried is how do we blend the old with the new and save some of our history so that the people who have been coming here for years because of that can still come back and see some of it. It isn't that we're going to go around and say, okay, every building that's 75 years old is going to be saved. These two buildings are quite rightfully within that historical situation of having the history and having the character and having the background to be able to save them, like the saloon. And I would just like you to try to meld the two things that are going on in this town rather than trying to, I don't know, I feel like it's become very political. And I think we can do both. I think we can save a few more buildings and we can keep that history for those people who really recognize the fact that we are different. We're different than the rest of this valley. And that's what they love about us, and that's what they come here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Larry?
Larry Stone, 152 Main Street. I live in a home that was absolutely preserved. Spent a lot of money preserving that house, and it has functioned because Jane and I have believed in what we were doing, thanks to the help of Kelly Toon. And to speak to your friend's letter, I'm the person who speaks out of two sides of the mouth. And let me tell you where my heart comes from. I spoke in favor sitting on the HPC because I sit amongst friends that are a part of the community that we live in and are dear to my heart. So it's very hard as a citizen to say no, sitting on a board when you're going against the flow. And I couldn't sleep that night from doing so because unlike what your friend thinks, I don't have a dog in this hunt. As a matter of fact, I preserved my house, just like Marco is saying, he wants to preserve his home without the restrictions. And it comes from my heart. So there was no double-sided speaking other than me being very clear when I spoke to the council and said, hey, I voted in favor and we did not. I did not want to. So I just want to clarify that. When it comes to what makes this town have character, it is the people. And to come in and mandate someone's private property, I don't think is very neighborly. As I said, Jane and I, we took care of 152 Main Street and are very proud of it. But we didn't do it because it was mandated. As a matter of fact, if our home were nominated, I would feel like there's a division going between my family and the community, and it would hurt. I don't want my home to be designated historic. And Marco and I have spoken, and I know his passion about the character and the charm of the town. He has it, just like Jane and I do. He comes from the old country of Italy. He understands, but he also understands business. And he knows that he hasn't been able to get anyone in that building because he doesn't have employees. He knows that the cost of trying to make that building that's decrepit come up to code and work and build onto it and create housing is going to be cost prohibitive. And he has said, just like other business owners, ask the saloon. It would have been a lot easier to scrape it and build up. It would have been a lot cheaper. So when it comes to charm and character, I work with incredibly talented architects, interior designers, and I know the talent in this county, this community. It's over the top. It's really good. So we can preserve the character because we are great characters. To reach out and mandate, I think, is not being very neighborly, and it's not entrusting that we as the community can preserve what we love, which is the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Very quickly, Marco again, 151. I did see your email and I read it. And in fact, I just didn't see the positive because I was thinking of the way I intend to own 151 Main. In fact, when I read about short term, I was surprised because I wouldn't have liked it to be a possibility for a building in the 100 block. So just wanted to clarify that I did see it, I read it, and maybe I didn't interpret it as positives, and I can see that angle.
Thank you, Marco. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on the issue? Jay, do you have anybody online?
No, sir, we do not have anybody with their hand up.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll close the public hearing.
Excuse me, sir, somebody did just raise their hand.
Oh, okay. Hi. Don't close the public hearing.
Van Hoyt should be able to speak now.
How you doing, everybody?
Please state your name and address, please.
John Hoyt, the owner of Nelson Avenue Family Partners LLC at 175 William Street. We have the bunkhouse and 3 apartments, and I'm in 5410 North 279th Street, Valley, Nebraska, 68064. And just speaking on, sorry I couldn't be there this evening, but just wanted to say that I spent 18 years on the Omaha Planning Board, and I appreciate all that you folks are doing there, and want to be a proponent for Minturn in any way we can as owners of that building. And as far as knowing that it's historical and non-historical things change, and but when you do a permanent historical setting on something and it doesn't get undone, but if the properties aren't physically able to stay as long as we think that we'd like to have them stay, just that's what scares me about these 2 properties. And I just want to say that I think that they're fine the way they are, but I would be against whatever I can say on this, to say that as a neighbor for the best of Minturn and having the experience that putting something that could never be changed for the future, a paradigm shift for the future of your city, I think it would be a mistake to put a historical preservation on them. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments. Anyone else there, Jay?
No, sir. No, sir.
Jay, I believe you have a email that was submitted earlier today for public comment.
I don't recall one, but let me look around.
Yes, Tracy Anderson emailed you at about 4:30 this afternoon, asking that be read into the record.
Stand by. Yes, I do have one. Tracy Anderson spoke or sent one at 3:43 this afternoon. Hello, is it too late to add this comment? I may or may not be able to attend the meeting tonight. Very sorry for last minute. Thanks. Then she goes on to state, hello, please vote to protect the properties at 151 and 155 Main Street and add them to the historical register. Everyone talks about keeping Minturn, quote unquote, and now it is time to act on it. We feel that there is not a single more important thing you can do during your tenure on the council than to conserve these structures if you want to preserve the charming nature of our town. There are other houses on the chopping block right now, and those will go. Many have already vanished. Please compromise a bit and save these structures, which will also serve to protect their large shade trees. Your vote to protect these houses will be a gesture that will last a lifetime and beyond. Future generations will thank you. Sincerely, Tracy Anderson, Steve Klein, 1016 Mountain Drive.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Tracy. Anyway, if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay. Council, any comments? We can start at the end then.
I don't have anything. Well, I guess I kind of do. You know, last month and a half, we've been going through making changes to the historical, basically rules for the 100 block. And I feel that they're beneficial to the properties that are nominated. So I just would hate to see all of our work go into it and we don't actually approve them. So I guess that's my feeling. That's all I have.
Right.
I'll just reiterate that during that process, all along, I've said that if the property owner doesn't view it as a benefit, that I couldn't support it. I'd like to go back to, I mean, there's nobody on this council that wants to turn Minturn into Vail. Like what we're talking about is the best way to keep the community and uniqueness of our community alive and well. And I look for guidance to this, this old philosophy kind of conundrum called the ship of Theseus paradox, where you're basically looking at like a ship that was built 100 years ago. And over 100 years, piece by piece, they fixed it. And then, after 100 years, that ship, is it the same ship if every single piece has been replaced? And I don't know. If the other question is, what if you use it for 100 years in a really cool celebration of history, and then you need to completely replace it and build a whole new one using the same blueprint? Does it serve the same form? Does it serve the same community purpose? So it really gets at the matter of form versus the actual matter of an article. And if you are looking at a house on Main Street that was probably built out of a catalog and it's been painted and changed over the years, I really think that what matters to our community truly in preserving our appreciation of history, where this town came from, the people and the characters who live here, the stores and things like that. It's not the individual sticks of wood. It's not exactly where the window is. It's making sure that we have an awesome code that we've written to encourage the right types of things. Where a mall is not going to be built there. We've got that addressed in code. And I think we need to kind of look more at the form and the use rather than the actual matter of what's going on down there. And if the owner wants to pick up the thing and redo a side and pop the top and keep it the same color and add a couple different windows, but keep the same style, that should be allowed. And to me, when an owner is coming up saying that these things are just too restrictive for me to keep a vibrant downtown, and I'll go again, like I think it's having a bunch of short-term rentals and old decrepit sheds on Main Street would be the worst thing that we could do on this town. So I think just in terms of keeping a vibrant history, community, and use alive, I just can't support doing that unless the property manager or the property owner is raising their hand, coming and saying, preserve, like, let's designate this thing and let's go. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you, Brian. Tom?
Yeah, I'll reiterate as well. Excuse my length. Yeah, I absolutely agree with many of the positions on maintaining the character, historical nature and architectural aspects of the building. However, as we've gone through this process, there seems to be some debate on what preservation actually means. Brian's ship analogy is a perfect example. Is that the building as is with required repairs or a facsimile thereof? Arguably, that can be achieved without preservation designation, but rather through the design review board in chapter 16. One of the things we talk about constantly is the bigger issue. We want to incentivize preservation without adversely impacting the town or the owners of those properties. So then we turn around and invoke additional restrictions on a property because it's within the 100 block that further limits ways to pay for and support that preservation. That's counterproductive. Additionally, we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. When we state we're limited in housing, we need to find ways to provide more and yet further limit residential options in the case of historical designated properties. Short-term rentals does not solve housing shortages, period. Two options of folks that will historically preserve: commercial entity that can afford the preservation, absorb the loss, knowing the type of business they're going to bring in is going to recoup those costs in a reasonable period of time. The other is a homeowner who wants a historical property, has no problem, and has a very different time horizon to spend that money and may or may not recoup those costs down the road. So at the end of the day, my whole point is, yes, we've put some incentives there, we've put some modifications, et cetera, but arguably even under the current historic preservation code, just as Brian pointed out, all kinds of mods can be made to this property. So then I beg the question, how is that historically preserving the property? As opposed to what we all wanted was the historical character of the property. Because in one house, the Blue House's case, a lot of repairs had to be made, et cetera. And in the code, we're saying you can do the back 50% residential. Well, that would mean doubling the size of both of those properties to be able to legitimately do that. So all I'm driving at is with those additional restrictions that are now in our code, I can't really support it. If we take those restrictions away, and if you have a historical property, it doesn't matter if it's in 100 block, it doesn't matter if it's 800 block, same rules apply. But now your property's in the 100 block, sorry, here are your restrictions. That's where unfortunately I hold the line. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tom. Lynn?
Yeah, I have some reiteration to do as well. Obviously, I come out on this issue very differently than some other folks and some other council members. And there seems to be a discussion going on about, well, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what you guys are saying, but since historic preservation requirements are being eased and since they would accommodate some changes, then somehow those buildings are no longer going to be historic. And so why bother with this? Why restrict homeowners, our property owners, and why shouldn't property owners be able to do whatever they want with their property? Well, first of all, the reason that these historic preservation rules were enacted in the first place was not because people were changing a window or two. If you recall, Pope's Bicycle Shop, which was one of the most charming, iconic buildings in town. And that building was demolished because the property owner felt that it had the greatest fair market value. And you talk about neighborliness, how it isn't neighborly to have a historic designation. Well, that's fine for you and Marco because you both respect the historic character of those buildings. But the next owner may not. The next owner might decide to demolish the properties.
That's what they need.
and build something completely different. I think that's what people are afraid of. That's why we need historic preservation zoning. I mean, we want to work with, the Historic Preservation Commission members have stated this. They want to work and be as flexible as possible to help any property owners that have these historic designated properties. They want to try to find new ways for them to have extra value. But it really, truly is essential. If we are going to keep Minturn, if we are going to, even if we're going to grow our downtown, it is essential that we keep our historic preservation zoning intact. Let me say a couple of things also about what happens if those buildings are raised, because there seems to be an assumption here that somehow these properties could just put in a flourish here and there, and that they would somehow look historic or feel historic in the same way. And I ask you to think about the town of Dillon, because Dillon is an interesting example, because there was, before my time, unfortunately, but there was a historic, really cool town there apparently, and they built the reservoir and washed out the historic town and just started building anew. And at Dillon, a town like Dillon, to me, is very different from a town like Minturn. And the other thing I would point out is, okay, you get to demolish these buildings and build a new building, but building costs now are $1,000 a square foot. What kind of building are you going to build for that? How much rent are you going to have to charge people? And if you charge people Vail style rents, what kind of businesses are they going to be? They're not going to be the little businesses that we want in town, because those businesses can't afford those rent in $1,000 square foot properties. And I think all of us have enjoyed big increase in value in properties in Minturn, and that's true of those of you who own historic properties. Whatever you paid for those properties, and I know, Marco, you knew it was going in a historic preservation zoning was in effect at the time when you purchased that property, and you purchased it with your eyes wide open. I'm certain that you've done well in terms of increased fair market value. But I think we have to really look at the big picture here. And I think we can encourage growth, responsible growth, but not at the expense of throwing Minturn essential key character out. And these are the two, in my opinion, most iconic buildings in all of Minturn. They're the buildings that tourists take pictures of. They're connected to Minturn's history and to the fact that Minturn was the lettuce capital of the whole United States. And they are a special kind of early 20th century middle-class Victorian housing. I think we want to preserve those two buildings. And that's not to say that we preserve every building or even most buildings that are old enough to qualify. But these two buildings are really key to keeping Minturn's character. These two buildings are really important, not because any of us want to take away property rights, but because we need these buildings in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay.
I don't have much, but I think the tension that everybody has sort of highlighted here is this conflict between encouraging growth and risking the character of our town. Or preserving the character of our town and risking prolonged stagnation. And like neither of those is the thing that we want for Minturn. We want Minturn to grow, and we want Minturn to grow like Minturn should grow, right? Like the problem, or maybe not a problem, one of the challenges, you don't really know the tipping point until you've passed it. I don't think people knew how important the bike shop was until it wasn't there, right? So there is, kind of to Lynn's point, a balance, and to the rest of the community, there's a balance. And I will say that if nothing else, Minturn is kind of adaptable and weird. And if we don't get it right away, we'll keep trying until we do. So, yeah, it's a tricky problem.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, not too much to add beyond what's already been said, but really want to say thank you to everybody that's come out and spoken up about this. Obviously, we've had numerous meetings about it. We've had a lot of emails. Folks write in and share their opinions. I've had a lot of good conversation with people around town as well. So just want to say thank you to everybody for the engagement on this. It's helps make our life a little bit easier, even if it's a difficult decision. So appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Eric. Oh, it was a couple of years ago when Pope's Place got scraped. That really did trigger the whole process of what's happening to our town and the older buildings and so forth. At the same time, over the last 2 years, we've lost that building, and there's really nothing happening. When we did the community plan and the design guidelines for the 100 block, it was in an effort to try to shape things in a way that maintained the character of our town, but could also revitalize downtown. It's tricky with the Historical Preservation Commission. It really is. I've at the beginning of this whole process, I was feeling pretty much like Larry as far as almost like a takings, even though it is legal. But over the years, I've been thinking about this, and we don't have very many historical buildings in town, structures in town that. I've been trying to figure out, go through a process in my mind where how can we remain vital in the downtown area, because believe it or not, back in the 80s, that was a huge commercial area. I mean, people are coming from all over the county, from all over the world, just to come by and see what Minturn was. They were busy. Everybody was busy, and then they weren't. Growth down valley, I think, took away a lot of the businesses' profitability, and we've seen a lot of commercial endeavors come and go. There's only a few left that have been here for a long time. So I think we do deserve to maintain what little we have left as far as the structures. But at the same time, I also believe it's incredibly important for us to move forward and invite development in some way that would maintain historical feel of the town, and at the same time allow profitability for the business person, and hopefully add more beds to our town, which is what would help our town survive and help our people thrive and the business owners thrive. I tried doing a business in downtown, and I was doing fine, but I couldn't do retail work. I was in audio video type electronics shop, and we quickly realized that retail was not going to work. There was no foot traffic at all, so we had to advertise, try to bring in people. So I went to a custom model where I was basically showing things that to customers that wanted to do business, and then design it, and they would pay up front, and then I would go out and install it. And that was the only way I could survive as a business. So it's these changes. I don't, or I've said this before. This is a work in progress. The historic preservation is the first branch, new branch of government in our town. And quite frankly, I'm not sure when P&Z was formed, but it was a hell of a long time ago. So this is a new part of our town government. I think it's important to understand that we're going to do this process as thoughtfully as possible. And also, I would be shocked if over the next 12 months we don't reshape it. We have to work with it. So I think it is important to do historical designations on these two structures, because they're about the only ones left besides the Helen's house and a couple others that may not meet the criteria, in my opinion, to be historically designated. But so I've struggled and tried to figure out in these options. I don't look at these as additional restrictions. I'm looking at those as hoping to provide flexibility to historical properties that are designated, and allow an owner to have the flexibility to alter the structures. And I'm not for the front 50% of the structure, but at least toward William Street, where they can do whatever it takes, whether it's just using it as storage space, or whether it's putting employees of housing behind there, or going up and doing more residential up there. Whatever, and that's the thing is, to me, I'm looking at each case, and I want to sit down when we designate. I want to sit down with the homeowners, and let's talk about what they want to do. And this council wants to hear this kind of stuff too, and maybe that helps us shape the code in the future as we move forward. So I think we're looking at being flexible, and obviously we all have very strong and well thought out opinions on this council. And so as we move forward, I think we will hopefully end up with a product that is good for Minturn, good for our character, and move forward. And I must insist that any new structures that come into town must reflect Minturn. I know there'll be new materials. It's not going to be a new construct, but it still needs to, in our design guidelines, states it. You have to meet the character of Minturn. You have to meet the environment surrounding Minturn. There's 5 guidelines in the 100 block guidelines that has to be met. So with all that said, that's all I got.
Mr. Mayor, if I might make a request.
Yes.
We were having some technical difficulties earlier, and this is out of the norm, but I would request that we reopen public comment for someone who would like to make a comment that was unable to log on earlier.
Sir, I'm opening back up to the public, and we have someone online want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. If you can hear me, please state your name and address.
Hey, Earl, it's Tom Sullivan. How are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Good. Thanks for letting me speak. I was trying to get online, but I couldn't find the link, and it wasn't on the website, but eventually I did it, and I appreciate you letting me speak. So I'm sure I didn't hear the first part of the meeting, but I'm sure it was said, hey, people come to Minturn for the history, and we should save our history, and I feel that way. So, but the point I want to make is, when we were on council, we changed the parking. But we changed the parking because we thought we were saving the old buildings. So if we're not going to save the old buildings, we've got to change the parking. Because, say, let's use Lynn's old shop there on the corner. If that lot doesn't have to have any parking requirements, you can put an 8,000 square foot building on that lot. So I don't, that's what we want. And moving forward, we're not going to have people who always love Minturn. You know what I mean? We're not going to have, you're going to get people who are like, you know what? I can make a buck. The town code's got loopholes in it. And I'm going to put an 8,000 square foot building up there on that, 3,700 square foot lot. So what has kept Minturn the way Minturn's been for this long period of time is the strict parking requirements that were required to open a business. So it made no sense to tear a building down because the parking were too strict. So I think that if you're not going to approve or not going to continue with historic district, you've got to change the parking plan as well. I mean, you can't have people saying, man, we can put up, that's on a 37-foot wide building. Think of like the Minturn Country Club, how big a building you could get up there with no parking requirements. I mean, that's a big lot. So, do you want a 20,000 square foot building on the Minturn Country Club parking with a lot with no parking requirements? So I think you really need to, before you dismiss the historic district, you need to think really long and hard about the parking requirements that we have 0 right now in the 100 block. So I do believe that it's super, super important to save the old buildings. And I think that was reflected when they tore down Pope's Bike Shop, and then they were threatening to tear down the mattress shop. When we were on council, we felt that the world was coming to an end, and people were pissed, and felt that we weren't doing our job. And that's how we historic district. And man, we put a lot of time. Think how much time we put into creating this historic district just to flush it down the toilet now. So I hope that you guys will continue the historic district and save these 2 buildings. But if you choose not to, you have to change the parking back to what it was or something. I mean, you can't have, developers, big money will come in, they're like, they got no parking requirement, man. Let's let it rip. So those are my thoughts. I know it's a difficult thing. I hope save the buildings because that's the right thing for Minturn. I'm sort of retired now. My wife and I are traveling around Colorado, and where we go are to the old towns. And that's what we want to see, are old Colorado towns. So that's what Minturn has. The motto was what? If you want to see, if you visit the Vail Valley without visiting Minturn, you didn't visit Colorado, or whatever that was. That's our selling point. That's what Minturn has over the whole county. Or the Upper Valley for sure. We are the only old town. We need to preserve that. So anyway, I appreciate your time. I know, and thanks for all your efforts.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you calling in.
Earl.
Marco?
Yeah.
Since I'm open.
Marco, again, I wanted to mention one more thing. I appreciate every single comment and opinion that I heard tonight, and on the speaker. And there's a common thread, which is the love and passion for Minturn and for its future, which includes the historical preservation and the health of businesses. I think with that spirit, the fact that I wouldn't take advantage of short-term rental in my property, because I think that would be bad for the community and for the particular part of town. And I might not even take advantage of the opportunity with the new rules to add 50% in the back. And I don't have enough experience, and I didn't dedicate as much time as you did to figure out the 100 block design guidelines and the additional restrictions and opportunities with the newer rules. So I cannot judge if one is enough or the other one is necessary to preserve what we all want to preserve. But I have to remember one thing my dad told me, that rules are not made for the ones that have good heart and intention to respect the community and the neighbors. The speed limit at 50 is not for the people that drive 49, is for the people that drive at 70. So the fact that I wouldn't think of taking advantage or of the property I currently own shouldn't be the reason why the rules are in place. The rules should be in place for somebody coming in that purchases from me and wants to do something that will not respect the desire of everyone to preserve Minturn and have it a healthy place to live and run a business. So I cannot judge if the set of rules for the 100 block are sufficient, if the additional rules for the historic designation are necessary. But I think the rules, whichever you guys that are more educated in this feel are to protect what we all want, they should be the rules for the property, regardless of me. That's it.
Thank you, Marco. Okay, I'll close the public hearing now. If there's no more discussion.
Well, I got a follow-up, just to
go ahead.
clarify. So the point that's being missed, as Lynn was brought up, we're not suggesting we don't historically preserve properties. What we are suggesting, though, I'm suggesting, I won't speak for Brian, is that we're invoking two sets of rules. So it's a cake and eat it too scenario in the 100 block. So if somebody has a house on Pine Street, it's historically designated, there's your set of rules. If you're on the 100 block, you get some additional rules. To me, that's not fair, and that's not going to incentivize preservation. That's not going to incentivize business. It's just not. I'm not suggesting we keep referencing the Pope's. Well, let's consider the Pope's building. It was in serious disrepair and was going to need a lot of work. We seem to gloss over that. Am I suggesting that the building as it existed shouldn't have stayed there? No. But again, everybody needs to at least wrap your arms around the fact that that building was going to cost a lot of money to preserve. Going back to my point of who's going to put that money into it. Secondly, current state of things, there are other properties in the 100 block. The Bellum House is currently up for sale now. So I throw that out there. I don't want an answer, but where is that going to lead when somebody pays the current asking price on that house, knowing full well the current state of that structure? I promise you it's going to be a problem based on the 100 block code. However, if historic preservation applies to that house the same as it does on Pine Street, that's an entirely different situation. But right now, you inflict the 100 block rules on that, it's going to be an issue for the current owners that would like to sell it. So understood, got it, but just understand that this is a situation where we're inflicting additional rules based on the location of that property when our intent is to historically preserve. And if that is the intent, we should incentivize in such a way that that is what occurs. That's all I'm driving at.
Thank you, Tom. Any other follow-up from council? Okay, now I entertain a motion. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance number 11, series 2024, ordinance of the town of Minturn, Colorado, amending the town's historic register, adding 151 Main Street, parcel number 2103-263-10-003.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Lynn and a second by Gusty. Let's do a roll call.
Gusty, aye.
Brian, nay.
Tom, nay.
Lynn, I.
Kate, I.
Boy, Eric, aye. And Earl, aye. Vote carries 5-2. Okay. Next, we have ordinance number 12, series 2024, first reading, an ordinance amending the town's historic register to add 155 Main Street. So the discussion is kind of pretty much the same, but go ahead and give us an overview on 155, please.
Sure. So I apologize. I had the two backwards. The one last was built in 1917. This one is the one that was built in 1914. So other than that, they are fairly similar. They were nominated under the same three designation criteria for distinctive characteristics of a type, period, method of construction or artisan, connection with persons significant in history, and geographic importance. So these two buildings have tracked together throughout this whole process. They're very similar to each other. They're almost mirrors of each other. I believe there's been some work done on the 155 Main that has not been done on 151 Main, and vice versa. So they do look a little bit different, but they are, for the most part, mirrors of each other. And so my overview from 155 Main does carry over to this in our whole process of processing an ordinance, addressing stability and flexibility for property owners in the hopes of allowing better peace of mind should properties be designated.
Thank you, Madison. So any more comments from council?
Do we have input on, I couldn't find it. Do we have input on record from the property owner on this one?
Yeah, we'll open up to public.
Okay, but well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just asking
It's not in
if
the
we
packet.
want to
Okay.
state anything about this property before public hearing.
Actually, I think since we reversed the properties, we've already approved. I think we approved. This wasn't Margot's property that we approved.
Well, you just need to correct that because it's.
Yeah, we do have to follow procedure. Okay, if there's no further comments from council, I'll open this up for public hearing. Larry?
I'll be very brief. Larry Stone, 152 Main Street. I don't know if that's possible, but I'll try. Two questions. One is, what do we do as a community if, like 151 Main Street, where Marco's been trying to figure out a way to get something in there? I think how long have you owned it? 2 years? Year and a half. That it remains empty for a few years because the rent prices, normal market values, where the market values of rent in the 100 block have been suppressed since the McLaughlin family owned it, owned all those properties, and since MR Minturn took it over. So rental rates have been suppressed. As the properties transfer over to new owners, they're rising. And that's why Tom Sullivan had said, hey, Kathy couldn't make it work at $4,000 a month of rent. And when you think about that, it makes sense. You have to have, at least 70,000 a year for an employee to have a living wage in this community. It's a lot. So if you have a 800 square foot, I'm not sure exactly what the square footage is, and you do the math on that, it's really difficult to find anything that would be even close to viable. Feasible is probably closer to the word, certainly not economic vitality. So if it remains empty, what do we do? We're messing with market forces here, right? So that's one question I have. The other is I really want downtown to be successful. And Matt, who was just in here, he left, who will have to leave the wine barn space in May. It needs a home for his wine tasting space. And I went over there with him and I said, I know it's tight. Could you live in here and function with a wine tasting room? And he said, yeah, I think I could. And so I had suggested, like I did with the Rocky Mountain Taco guys that SBA 504 program could be a great way to get in with 10% down, and you get the bank and SBA to fund the rest. And he thought he might be able to. So are we willing to adjust our ordinances so that you have a someone living and working in a historic space or any space on the ground floor? Because that's something that might be able to work for him. So those were the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I think with the options here, I think that's one of them. So where you would have 50% of the front property commercial and 50% for people who want to live there, 50% for them to live in the back.
Okay.
So, yeah. That was option 6, I think. No, 7. That was option 7. Yeah. Okay, Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. I assume right now we're talking about 155?
Yes.
Okay. I was in that building for 14 years. 5, 6, 7 days a week. 6, 8, 10 hours a day. It is, I'm just clarifying for your knowledge, it is in good shape. Minimal interior issues. I had one little 18-inch heater go out in the bathroom that was electric that got replaced for $75. The heater works fine. The electricity was redone, I think, while Rebecca was in there. The floors were redone. So the inside of the building is in great shape, as far as I'm concerned. I think somebody could live in there if they wanted. You've got the back bedroom that could be part, and if they had it on, that would be your back 50%. I think when we went to the DDA in, what was that? Colorado Springs, they gave us a whole booklet about businesses that are doing exactly that. They're doing their business up front, kind of like the leather shop was in the little space, and they're living in the back. It was a great idea for Minturn. It was that scale of businesses we want. It was the type of businesses we like, small business that are different than all the big guys in the Ararat Valley. It's a good building for it. And even if they built the backyard, you still have a little front yard. Between those 2 yards, if the owners got together, cleaned it up, made some more benches there in a little area. The one thing I learned with my business was having the bench out front kept the men happy. They'd sit out there and chit chat while the women came in and shopped, and they spent a little more time in there because their husbands weren't bothering them. So, that front yard could become a community open area like we've talked about in the downtown between the two owners. They could work that out. It would be great. I just want to confirm that those buildings, including the work that Marco did to his, which was wonderful, are in good shape for that. Not all those buildings can be saved. There again, not all those buildings meet the requirements. The country club has been totally changed. There's no way, if you read our code, that building can really go up for historical. It used to have a second floor on it. It used to have a different outside on it. So I just wanted to confirm that in your minds, that it is a building worth saving. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Do we have any other comments? Jay, anybody out there?
Yes, sir. Stand by. Mr. Warren, you can go ahead and turn your mic on.
Hi, thank you.
Please state your name and address before you start.
Sure. Tom Warren, 15870 County Road 162, Buena Vista. And hi, hello, how are you? And I represent MR Minturn, who is the owner of 155. And I wanted to just quickly say that when this process first started, we were, I won't lie, completely terrified of what this would mean for the holding and what we could do with it, and if we could possibly sell it, or if that would even destroy the viability of being able to move it. But we do believe that the concessions that were put forth in the previous ordinance that give us a little bit of give and take, especially the live work option, makes this building much more viable in its current state or in a slightly expanded state using the 50/50 in operating any type of expansion or addition to the back for living quarters and leaving the front intact. We do support in this iteration this being designated historical at this time.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you calling in.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other comment from anybody?
That's encouraging news.
That's all right.
That was very encouraging to hear from Tom say that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Any further comments from council? I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 12, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending the town's historical registry, adding 155 Main Street, parcel number 2103-263-10-004.
Eric second. Oh.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. Roll call, please.
Gusty, aye.
Brian, aye.
Lynn, I.
Yeah.
Eric, aye.
Early. All right. Okay, so ordinance 11 and 12 have passed. Next item on the agenda is a motion to accept the 2025 annual budget. The process begins. Before you get going, Jay, I just want to say that the budget is the expression of the priorities that this council holds. So I would urge everyone to take a look at that. And with that, I think Jay's obviously been listening, so I think he already knows our priorities. But do look at the budget information as we get started in that with that thought in mind. And with that, I assume, Jay, are you taking over?
I think Michelle's going to start.
There you are.
Well, Jay, you're on the camera. It's budget season. I don't know if you're wearing your money tie, but you certainly can speak first if you'd like.
I don't have my.
This is like Jay's Super Bowl.
What time zone are you in? It's sunny out there.
I don't have my tie on. I was going to wear that for the December 6th, though. Trust me.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm happy to jump right in, Jay, then if you would like, so we can keep things rolling. So with that, Jay, if you'd like to put the budget presentation on the screen, we can get started. So tonight we are asking for a motion to accept the budget. This is not approving the budget. This is simply a formality that we need to go through so that we can start diligently underway with the approval of the budget process and review of the budget. So we just ask that you accept the budget tonight. Again, this is not approving it. With that, in perfect timing, as the mayor just brought up, the council has 5 key priorities. The council has identified that the key priorities for the 2025 to 2027 strategic plan include infrastructure and services, managing growth, affordability, economic development, and environmental responsibility. So we look within this budget process to identify how those 5 priorities can best be achieved through the budget. Next slide. So here, Jay, if you want to talk very briefly about some key observations for the general fund revenue.
Okay. The property tax that I presented does go in conformance with the special session that was held in August with the state legislature. Essentially, what came out of that is residential property values will go from about 6.4% down to 6.25% of the assessed value, and commercial will go from 29% to 27%. Minturn is a home rule, and we are debruced, and what that means is that basically what we do is we take the assessed valuation and we multiply that by our mill levy. Again, the assessed valuation was changed by the state, so that will be reduced. It shouldn't go up dramatically this year for several reasons, including that, and the other one is we are not in a reassessment year. Next year is a reassessment year. The sales tax, it looks like there's a 4% increase. In actuality, what I do is I compare 23 and then look at 24 and how it's going. The difference in the slight increase is we get two forms of sales tax. One is from the state and one is a portion of the county's sales tax. what I did is I modified the county up, and I somewhat held the state level just to reflect what actually happened in 23. And so what actually looks like an increase is very close to a flat budget. What we're looking at for 23, 1.239 million, and what I've budgeted is 1.218 million. So about $15,000 difference. And then the budget itself over 25 over 24, at the very end of the budget, we have about a 6.7% increase in expenditures.
Any questions for Jay? Thank you, Jay.
So I will say that we are trying to be very brief on this. I appreciate your time, and I don't want glazed eyes. So, Michelle.
It's too late, Jay.
Sorry.
Yeah, you got to be down here in person if you want to grab attention.
But we appreciate your insight and knowledge. Thank you so much. So on this slide, Jay just likes everyone to know where your property tax dollars go. He used to have a slide of $1 that was broken up into little bitty pieces, and I made him finally, after 15 years, update it. So this is what we have now. Some of the amounts, mill levy amounts, have slightly changed, and you will see this in your budget packet as well. Next slide.
To Michelle's chagrin, on page 84, you'll actually see presentation, and it's not $1, it's $100 bill.
Oh.
Is this like a cartoon character he's not gonna let die?
Yes. So I stand corrected. On page 84 of the budget, the $100 image is still there, broken up into mill levy slices. So here, 2024 fund expenses. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an overview very quickly of some of the things that we're going to be spending some of our bigger ticket items on for next year out of the general fund. So we've all been aware for a while that we have the Railroad Avenue pedestrian and cycling safety improvements that need to be made. That application right now is in with the Public Utilities Commission, and once that gets approved, we have the grant funding already through Colorado Department of Transportation to add sidewalk. It feels too soon to say the word bulb out, but it is.
What are you trying to do here?
It's an increased area of line of sight, as well as some speed bumps and some additional signage for folks to share the road. So that we expect will probably start spring of 2025. Main Street sidewalks phase 2 is also looking to start spring of 2025, and we will have Stolfus Engineering here probably at the next meeting to give you all an update of the ever increasing construction costs and how expensive the project has gotten and how short your sidewalk has become. So we will discuss that at the next meeting. However, we are looking at having a $220,000 grant match for the $1.7 million grant. We also received $220,000 to match our match from DOLA in addition to the Revitalizing Main Street funds. Like the last meeting we discussed was the Taylor Street repaving project. So we're looking, we thank everybody that came out from Taylor Street to give us input. Jeff Spinell, the town engineer, and I are compiling all of that great feedback now, and we're looking at things like drainage improvements, grading improvements, line of sight improvements, as well as leaving the majority of the road in its current footprint for repaving. The last thing I'll say is we heard quite a bit of feedback to take out some of the trailhead parking for the Game Creek Trail. So we'll be looking at taking some of that out per extensive public comment on that front. And then the last thing we have that I was hopeful to do it this year, but skyrocketing costs have really put a damper on this. We're looking at repaving Norman Street and Nelson Street. And this is going to be coming before you in the coming months for consideration. We are looking at ways that we can increase the safety on Nelson Street. That's the hill where if you spend any time over there, you'll see a a large portion of the folks in downtown use what is currently known as Spence and Steph's lot to do a U-turn. And we want to see if there are ways that we can make that safer going forward. Lynn Feiger asked that a future council item for discussion be the discussion of the safety of Nelson Street, and maybe we look at making that a one-way, and that discussion needs to take place. Additionally, Norman is looking at getting repaved on both the east and west side of the road. Or hill and river side of the road, but costs have continued to increase. So I want to get estimates before you all, before we get approval and get that moving forward. We originally had cost estimates looking at under $40,000, and now they're looking at over $100,000. So as an example of ever increasing costs. Next slide. So the enterprise fund, I do want to talk very briefly. This is not a water discussion tonight, but things continue to come up about the enterprise fund and how it funds staff. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and so I'm happy to provide some accurate data so that everyone can see exactly what the enterprise fund does. So the enterprise fund pays for 25% of 2 public works employees. It pays for 50% of the town clerk treasurer, who handles all of the utility billing, which totals 11.11% of all of town staff costs. So the general fund essentially pays 89% of town staff. General fund or enterprise fund pays 11%. So just so that we're all on the same page, so that everyone's clear, so that if you see anything on Facebook that says, you know, your water rates are going up to pay for town staff, it's inaccurate.
I'm wondering if we've gone too far the other direction.
Yes.
Because I know a very high percentage of your time is spent on the enterprise fund.
Over 50% of my time, I would say, is spent on the enterprise fund, but none of the enterprise fund pays for my salary.
I'm wondering, I know we want to keep water costs low, but you know, we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. If we shouldn't be more straightforward in our accounting on this.
And certainly that is something we will be looking at. Come December, I will be coming back to all of you with more information about a water treatment plant and how we look to pay for that. Once we have direction or more of a conversation with council, we will then talk water rates, and this will come back up. Jane, next slide. So this also is in your packet, not in the form of a $100 bill, breaking out expenses by percent. You can see we're pretty proud to keep employee costs as low as we possibly can. So your staffing costs are pretty low. They're that blue bar. And then public services proudly are the largest bar, which we believe they should be. Next slide, Jay. So here's the second to last slide, and what I really wanted to get into tonight, making sure you all know some things that are not finalized in the budget yet that still need to be considered. The Minturn Bike Park continues to be an amazing asset for the town of Minturn, and we continue to look at ways to improve upon that. And when I say that, I mean, I look to the Vail Valley Mountain Trails Alliance to help me understand the ways that can be improved upon that to make it a better asset. They have been a great partner to work with, and you know, Ernest in particular really just helps us better understand how we can continue that, the improvements that are being made out there. I do expect them to come back with a financial request. Right now, we provide $15,000 a year toward maintenance and improvements out at the bike park. And we still need to have our meeting with Vail Valley Mountain Trails to understand additional requests that may come forward. Additionally, you all had a conversation at the last council meeting about early child care support and how we can support early child care in Minturn. Everybody that I heard at the meeting was very supportive of finding ways to make that happen. So we are now looking at how we can support early child care in Minturn through a variety of avenues, financially, of course, And hopefully that looks like, I'm hopeful that they're talking tonight at the Minturn Community Fund about ways to do that as well, and that we might all partner. So I just want to make sure you all know that has not been figured out yet. Staff merit-based wage pool has been set at 7%. This is something that the council has the ability to adjust however you see fit. I just want to be fully transparent and have it up here so that it can be discussed as needed. And again, this is just the beginning of conversations, and this will come up again throughout the budget discussion. In the current budget, we are looking at including the position for a public works director. Yeah.
Big time.
We'll see what happens. My eyesight is going, but Jay, I think we have set aside $130,000 plus taxes and insurance. Is that correct? Okay.
It's 80 or 65 in each fund though.
Thank you. So 65,000 out of the general fund and 65,000 out of the enterprise fund to pay for a public works director.
A very important position. It really sucks a lot of time out of staff, and it's just long past due.
That'll help you with some of your time too, though, won't it? Like the public works director, okay, great.
Yeah. So more to come on that front as well.
Like John Volk, who is our contract water plant operator, would some of that salary offset? Would they oversee some of that, or is that all part of the water plant discussion later on?
Well, right. That's a really good question, because quite a few different things could happen as part of this. If council decides to approve the hiring of a public works director, we would then need to decide what that position looks like. It might be hard to get for $130,000 someone that also has a water operator license. Maybe you can, like we got to kind of test the waters, no pun, to see what's out there and available. So yes, that is a conversation to keep in that discussion of what does that position end up looking like. Additionally, we have a planning department right now that has a part-time planning director. He's at about 10 to 15, Scott Hunn, who's incredible, and he's at about 10 to 15 hours a week. We are not looking at changing that at this time because we kind of had to pick between public works or planning, and we went with public works. So we're looking at keeping planning department the same. We're also looking at bumping up the stipend that the planning commission gets. So currently they get $75 a meeting, and we're looking to increase that to $125 a meeting. And then lastly on here, I have entryway communication sign. We have not discussed this. This is something new that I'm bringing forward. We have been utilizing the orange variable messaging boards. Yeah, Jay, you can change this slide. We've been utilizing the variable messaging board sign to try to find additional ways to communicate with residents. I think it's been relatively successful so far, but it's ugly as all get out. So, it was brought forward that maybe we reconsider, because this has been discussed in the past, and the council didn't want to, look like Vegas, which I thought was very reasonable. So what we did is we contacted a sign company that does entryway signs. This is a sign that would be placed potentially in front of the yellow building where the current temporary variable messaging board goes, and be able to put up communications to residents and visitors. Right now it's looking between 40 and 45,000 to be able to put a sign in. And the company also helps. My favorite part is the company helps handle the CDOT permitting. So this is not currently in the budget. It's something that I want to bring forward to everyone now so that we can start thinking about it. But communications has been an ongoing effort through this council to find better ways to get the word out to residents. And it seems like signage at the north entryway of town is a pretty good way to do it. So we don't have to get into the depths of this discussion tonight, but I wanted to see your general concept of this.
I'm wondering, just looking at it from here, it's kind of hard to read. And if you're driving by, as opposed to you can't stop and look at it.
Right.
How big is it?
Is that?
So that is a 7-foot wide sign.
So I think that's big enough.
I think it makes, just like, you probably wouldn't want that picture
Yeah, that's a
with that
Yeah.
font, but like, if it just said something else more clearly.
Gypsum has one when you're coming off of I-70 and you can see it really good.
Yeah.
So full transparency, we just called Gypsum. And and this is the company that did gypsums. And you know, no need to reinvent the wheel. So this is the company that did gypsum's entryway sign, and like you said, you can have whatever background you would like, and it can change. But just looking for additional ways to continue to communicate to residents. So we can better fine tune the pricing on this if this is something that council is wanting to consider, at which point I'll go back to the budget drawing board and find where we can finagle money to do this. But I wanted to bring it forward for consideration because it's competing with things like early childcare and you know, other things that are also incredibly important. So I want to lob this out there.
Big increase in expense, the public works director, is that the big?
Yes, yes. It's we say $130,000 salary, but once you add in taxes and all of the benefits, you know, Jay, what are we at? Probably 190?
So I did, as an example, I did 65 for the base rate, and then I came through and said we need 80 in each fund in order to make it. So it comes out about 160 when you look at the total fund.
Yep, so we're adding about 160,000 to the budget. And that would be an ongoing annual expense, which gets me a little nervous because you never know what the economy is gonna do.
Anything decreasing?
Litigation?
Yes, litigation is decreasing. Thank you all. I have no other areas where I can think of. I will say your capital expenses will continue to increase. We'll be talking about Bell and Bridge at the next meeting. I don't know what will happen with that. We'll see what gets recommended with Bell and Bridge. So I wish I had a rosier outlook, but I'd rather just throw it out there, be realistic, you know, and say we have a lot of capital improvement in the general fund that needs to occur. And I want to be very clear that the Public Works Director is a big ongoing expense.
But all of this is such a huge investment in the town. We've been lacking in our capital improvement, neglecting our capital improvement for decades and decades. So it's all stored up and we're finally.
Right, because I'm gonna want to get back around to phase 2 and 3 of Pine Street eventually, once we get done with Taylor. And that will be far more expensive than Taylor Street.
I feel we put a lot off because of all the attorney fees that we had last year, you know, with the lawsuits, and maybe this will get us back on track too, so.
Yeah, I think probably we need to, in future agenda items, consider ways of increasing revenues in our town. You know, we've been working on it, but, you know, it's, to do our town right, we need more, to generate more revenues.
Which brings me to the Battle Mountain settlement and the land that we have.
Yes.
Because if you think this is sufficiently related to the budget, do we have a process in mind for determining what we're going to do with that?
Yes, so I talked to Mike Sawyer as recently as today about that process and working with Scott Hunn in the planning department to bring that process through. Mike anticipates that process will take about a year to get that process done. But as you saw in the manager's report, I am anxious to get that process going because I believe that process can help facilitate funding for several of the one-time expense. It's one-time funding. So, you know, it would benefit some one-time expenses.
So there are a lot of planning and zoning functions that have to take place before.
Correct.
we consider.
That's correct.
And when you say that process, you're referring to the public process of
Yes.
deciding what to do with that?
The public process of deciding what the public is accepting to do with the land, and then the need to then appropriately zone that land
To do the thing.
to do the thing that gets approved as an example.
So if we need to, or do whatever.
It's not going to help us in the next year or two.
I asked Mike I asked for a year. I said a year would be great. A year would be before a water treatment plant loan gets put into place, is my overall goal. So I've already reached out to Eagle Valley Land Trust and asked them if we can start discussing what an opportunity would look like for proper zoning of that land to make it a viable, a tax benefit to someone to zone. I based that off of the survey results from the community survey, the 2024 community survey, that indicated folks would like to see some level of recreation or open space. And that was specifically and only regarding the Highlands parcel.
And that was specifically to be dedicated to a water treatment plant. If we can raise enough money on it, so. And I think that's perfectly ideal. It maintains the pristine Highlands area, and it brings in, because it'll be a conservation easement, and it brings in hopefully enough money to help us with our plan.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if anyone has any initial questions before we accept the 2025 budget, Jay and I are available to answer them.
I kind of probably went through this with too much detail, but are we gonna be able to discuss some of the line items at the next one? Is this just accepting it and then we have discussion on it?
That's right.
I'll just save it till then. Then I got a few notes, but it's not, I have 3. It's nothing major, so.
Nope, all of them will be up for discussion at a forthcoming meeting.
Okay, great.
Yep.
We'll go down the line, I guess. I think given how much time we spend on historical preservation and how much we love Minturn and think this is an important thing, I had sent some notes to the HPC about some proactive things they could be doing. And, I talked about this last meeting, talking about signage around town and on partner lands and festivals and incorporating history, actually doing things to build a culture around historical appreciation in our town instead of what else we're doing. I think we need to consider funding that if we're going to do that. So it would be nice to set aside some funds for the HPC to make recommendations on coming up with some ideas and encouraging better incorporation of our history into our town.
So Brian, this is what I got. Let us celebrate Minturn.
Lettuce days.
I love lettuce days. I'm here for lettuce days.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
What
couldn't
is the outfit I will wear to this?
We should let the HPC come up with things and have some funding ready if they can come up with that, because I think we've heard loud and clear from the community that that's really important, and I strongly believe that building a community around it is more important than the atoms.
I always thought we should have an inn in town called Lettuce Inn.
Do it.
Lettuce race, the options.
Another rabbit hole. Sorry.
I remember back in 1989.
Wait,
when the World
let's not go down
Championship-
rabbit holes.
Oh, did I step on it? Go ahead, Tom.
I just keep your heads out of rabbit holes. Keep going.
We're in a fun time now.
Yeah.
It's only 7:25.
We know we
So
have a
yeah,
real opportunity in front of
1989.
us.
Whoever was, if you've been here, you knew what I'm talking about. The first World Championships in Vail, and we had Western days in Minturn, and we had a huge effort. We had stage coaches, we had gunfights, we had saloon girls hanging out of the Eagle River Inn windows, kind of coaxing people in, and oh, it was great. It was so awesome. We had a great time. The Europeans
Do we have any other future agenda items?
We do have other future agenda items.
So maybe that should be an agenda item.
Lettuce days.
Okay,
Well, I'd be willing to bring Dave, my horse, if you wanted to do that.
that'd be cool. We did have horses there too. Well, you have to have horses for stagecoach.
Would you care to tell us about the future agenda items?
Yes, so at a future agenda, I will be bringing forward, we have the appointment of a new scholarship committee member. that we're looking at. We will be bringing forward Bellum Bridge. We will be bringing forward an update on the Phase 2 sidewalk project. And there was one other thing that I apologize.
Do we need a
Oh,
motion to
conditional
accept this
use
budget?
permits will be coming forward.
Yes.
Do we need a motion to accept this budget before? we move
Yes.
on to that?
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, we went off on all kinds of.
I know, well, I figured we ended up on future,
Why
so we
stay
need
with
to go, we need to do this first, right?
I make a motion to accept the 2025-2026 budget.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Motion by Tom, second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So you want to talk more about future agenda meetings?
That was
I'll
all.
ask a question. What happened to your Western days? What happened? Why are there not gals hanging out at the saloon and gunfights? Where'd it go?
Everybody got shot.
I'll second.
Okay, Eric. That was a motion by Kate,
Oh.
second by Eric to adjourn.
Mhm.
Are we adjourning?
We are.
We are.
I see you
My
guys.
time's over. All those in favor?
We are adjourned. Too late, man.
Now, I just want to make one comment.
We're adjourned.
Ella Burnett's 98th birthday,
We're adjourned.
October